Stavridis. He's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and is now a partner at the Carlyle Group, a global investment firm. Admiral, great to see you in person. I heard you kind of chuckling at times when we were hearing this report. What's your reaction to this?
You know, I think all of us have a tendency to chuckle when we hear something that is just British expression, alert here, gobsmacking. It's just an incredible breach of security. I really have never seen anything like it in my 4 decades in uniform, and I've operated at these very high levels. So what's supposed to happen is all of this should be taking place behind the deepest of classification systems generated across something called SIPRNet, which is a highly classified means of exchanging information. The idea of using signal and unclassified, albeit encrypted somewhat app, is just staggering. And I'll conclude by, think about this kind of from the inside out. This will drop in front of our troops, who are constantly told you've got to guard and protect classified information or you will go to Fort Leavenworth. This will drop in front of our allies, who are hearing not only disparaging comments from the vice president, who thought he was in a safe space, but he wasn't. Our allies will be highly discouraged and less likely to share intelligence with us in the future. And how about in Beijing and Moscow and Caracas, Venezuela? It's high fives, it's real insight into our process. I truly think this deserves a deep investigation, a lessons learned, and never, never to happen again.
There are so many questions to ask you. It's just an astounding story. But since you obviously have this eye to NATO, all of those texts about the freeloading Europeans, all caps, pathetic, from Pete Hegseth, what does that do when you then have to go sit with those counterparts and try to get along, ask for favors, cooperate?
And share intelligence. All the above is damaged. And let's face it, that transatlantic bridge between the United States and our European partners is already kind of creaking. A lot of this is not going to be shocking to them to hear it, but to hear it so directly, so vividly, and in the middle of operational activity is deeply concerning. And final thought here, Jeff Goldberg, the editor of Atlantic, was very careful not to reveal a lot of the details. But if it went to him, who else could it have gone to? These were strike points. This is American aircraft going to this point. That's out there in an unclassified, putting our airmen, in this case, at risk.
I want you to expand on that because you mentioned Beijing, Moscow, and Caracas. These are some of the top officials in the administration, in the cabinet. There's no question that intelligence folks for these adversarial governments are trying to figure out what's on their phones, right? So it's not just the fact that they included this person, this journalist in this conversation. It's also if their phones get lost, if their phones get hacked. It's quite possible that that intelligence could have been obtained by an adversary.
Oh, absolutely. And Signal, although it's a level of encryption used among some business people and I guess some families who are trying to avoid sharing a lot of information. That's not top flight encryption in any sense. It is absolutely vulnerable to China and Russia in particular. So you've got to assume everything on those Signal accounts, and I hope we're going to learn, has this been going on for 2 months? I'm sure it's going to stop like now. But everything that has passed those Signal circuits over the last 2 months, we've got to consider that that is compromised. It's being read in Moscow. It's being read in Beijing, probably being shared with their partners and friends as well.
I do want to turn to Ukraine, Russia, because I have a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander question for you. This is about Steve Witkoff. He's been really one of the point people when it comes to these negotiations. He's met with Vladimir Putin now multiple times, and he said this to Tucker Carlson over the weekend.
Well, first of all, I think the largest issue in that conflict are these so-called 4 regions: Donbass, Crimea, the names
Lugansk, yeah.
Lugansk, and there's two others. They're Russian speaking.
Yep.
There have been referendums where the overwhelming majority of the people have indicated that they want to be under Russian rule.
Yes.
I think that's the key issue in the conflict.
Okay, so I have a question for you because first off, these aren't so-called regions; they're oblasts. They are regions, and Crimea isn't one of the four. That's from a previous conflict, and it isn't Lugansk; it's Luhansk and Donetsk and Kherson and Zaporizhia. Those are the four areas that have been annexed by Putin. How problematic is it that you have someone in such a important position who is lacking rudimentary knowledge of of Ukraine?
Yeah, it's concerning, obviously, and it's Crimea plus those four regions, which constitute a land bridge from Crimea. It's the heart of what Putin wants. And what I really was concerned about when I saw that clip was the looseness of, and there have been referendum, and the vast majority of the people want to be in Russia. I haven't seen that data. And I know there are parts of those regions where there is more Russian spoken than in other parts of Ukraine, but it's a stretch, at least, to say that there have been referenda. To the degree there have been, they've been conducted under Russian authorities. So guess how those are going to come out. So as with everything with Russia and with Vladimir Putin, you have to take it with an enormous grain of salt. And I hope that Mr. Witkoff, who is indefatigable in moving all around the globe, moving these very important conversations, not just in Ukraine, he's also deeply involved in the Middle East. He's becoming kind of a part of the whole diplomatic apparatus of the United States. He needs a staff that can really get him informed so he has got the basics of what's going on. That's going to be crucial.
Might need a map. And then while he tries to staff up there. Admiral, thanks so much for being with us.